This is a tutorial for Numbers for the iPad. Numbers is Apple's equivalent of Microsoft Excel, and this video follows on from my previous tutorials on Pages and Keynote, and I'll put some links to those in this video so you can check those out too later on. Numbers is very similar to Microsoft Excel. The way we do things and complete certain tasks is different, but in terms of how powerful it is, I actually think Numbers is a very impressive app. So when you load up the Numbers app, you have a couple of different options. You can open up a previous document if you've created something before, or you can create something new from scratch. And here we can see that we have numerous templates to choose from. And it really depends on what kind of thing you're hoping to create in this. But just for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm actually just going to create a blank spreadsheet. So this is what it looks like when you are starting from scratch. Now, unlike Microsoft Excel, we don't have endless rows and endless columns. It's given us a few, and we can adjust the number of those quite easily. So if we have a look along the rows, we can see A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And then beyond that, we just have a circle with two vertical lines. And if I tap that, I can add more columns as I need. The same goes with the rows. We can see 1 through to 22, and in the bottom left hand corner we see a circle with two horizontal lines, and from there I can add more cells if that's what I need to do. So let's have a look at now how we might organize the spreadsheet and name certain things and kind of sort of start arranging our document. So at the top in the middle we can see it says blank 2, and if I double tap on that I can actually give this file a name. And then if we have a look towards the top left of the screen, what we can see is it says sheet 1, and next to that is a plus sign. So just like in Excel, we can have multiple different tabs. So I can just tap that to create different sheets. And if I tap on any one of those sheets, then it gives me a context menu. So I can cut, copy, duplicate. So if I want to create if I've created a spreadsheet, I want another copy of it to have it slightly different, I can tap on duplicate, or I can tap on delete. So I'm just going to delete the ones that I don't need and just stick with the sheet that I've got. And I can rename this sheet if I just double tap on the sheet name, sheet 1. I'm going to just call this sales data. I'm going to put together a sort of spreadsheet for the purpose of this tutorial and sort of show you how to edit and create and filter and all those sort of different things. So to enter data into a cell, it's pretty straightforward. I can just tap on a cell and I can begin typing. I've got a hardware keyboard connected, so I can just type in something like book 1, book 2, and every time I hit the return key, it takes me to the cell below. Now, if you don't have a hardware keyboard, if you double tap on a cell, it brings up the keyboard and you can just type in that way as well. So at the moment we have this table here, and there's not much present at the moment, and we will fill this up. But I just want to show you how you might customize the look of this table. This is very similar to what we see in Pages as well as Keynote. If we have a look towards the top right, just a little bit further in, we can see a paintbrush icon. And that gives us a menu. This is contextual based on what we have selected. So if I have a graph selected, this will give me a different set of options in terms of what I can edit. But because we are looking at a table at the moment, the options it's given me in terms of the look and design is based around the table. Now the first set of options we have is to change the look of the table. And I can change its color scheme or the layouts in terms of where header columns are, etc. And then if we look below that, I have the option of having header rows or header columns. I'm just going to take away the header column because I don't actually need that there. So if I just tap the minus sign, that will disappear. Now you'll notice within this, we also have the options to freeze rows or freeze columns. So if I have a particularly big spreadsheet and I want to keep the header row visible at all times as I'm scrolling, I can set that up here. So what I'm going to do is quickly create a header row so you can kind of see that in action. So now I've created this header row. If I tap on where it says 1, it will select the entire row. And then if I go back to my paintbrush icon, go to header and footer, and if I freeze the row, what this means now is if I scroll, that header is always going to be visible. I can do the same, for instance, if I wanted to have a column that was visible at all times or multiple columns. So what I can do is I can just tap the letter for that column, select it, go back to my header and footer options, and then I can add that as a frozen column as well. Other options I have for editing the table, including if I want to display the table name, I think I'll just turn that off. I can have a table outline, which will put a very light border around the edge. Alternating rows can be turned on or off, and that makes it quite useful if you have a lot of data. The alternating colours means that it's a little bit easier to read. I also have a few different options in terms of the grid, in terms of displaying the horizontal lines, vertical lines, and header row lines. I'm just going to turn the horizontal and vertical lines on just to make this a little bit more readable. Now towards the bottom I have some typeface options, so I can change the look of the table. I'm just going to pick fairly standard font, but what I will do is make the size of it a little bigger so it's just a bit more readable. Now you'll notice whilst I have this edit menu open, if we look along the top we can see different categories. I've got table, cell, format and arrange. So far we've looked at table. What we're going to look at now is the cell options, and some of the things we can do here are actually very powerful. So what we have to bear in mind is, unlike table options, which affects the entire table or what we have viewable on this spreadsheet, cell only applies to an individual cell or multiple cells that we've selected. So what we can see from here is the first few options are fairly standard. I can change the typeface, I can make certain things in bold if I choose, I can underline, strike through, I can change the size, I can even change the text colour. Below that I can change the alignment within the cells, and if I have a cell with quite a lot of data, I can actually change the vertical alignment, whether it's towards the top, middle or bottom of the cell. And if I have a lot of text or paragraph style text, I can choose whether or not that text automatically goes to the next line when it reaches the end of the cell width. Below that I can change the colour of the cell or the group of cells, and I can choose from many different colours. I can choose a gradient, or I can have an image in the background and choose how that image is treated, whether it stays to its original size, is stretched or scaled, whether there's a colour overlay to that as well. I'm just going to go with white just for now. Now at any point if I want to change anything or I've made a mistake, if we have a look towards the top left next to spreadsheets, we have the undo command. I can tap on that and just undo back through the steps until I'm happy with how it looks again. Now what I can also do is if I tap and hold, I also get the option to redo as well. So the keyboard shortcuts for that would be Command and Z to undo, Command Shift and Z to redo. Now if we have a look at the bottom, we have something called conditional highlighting, and this is a particularly powerful thing that you can do if you have a lot of data and you want particular aspects of that to be highlighted based on what's entered inside it. So just to give you an example, I have a profit column over here, and I'm just going to enter in a few different values. So I've entered in a bunch of currency data there, or sales data, and I'm going to go back to my edit tab and I'm going to choose at the bottom conditional highlighting. I'm just going to add that to this column or this set of data here. Now what I can do is change the colour of the cell based on whether or not any of these numbers hit a certain threshold. So let's have a look at some of the options here. Now if I just have a look, just past halfway down, I've got two options. One is less than or equal to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose less than or equal to, and I'm going to enter in a value. So for example, on this column, if I want to show a concern, say books that have sold or made less than £150, so I'm going to enter in 150. I'm going to ask that it is coloured in red if the sales are at £150 or below, and as you can see that's automatically highlighted. Now I'm going to hit done, and then I'm going to add another rule because I can add multiple rules on the same column. So as we can see at the bottom here, it says add rule. So I'm going to tap on add rule. I'm going to do the same thing again. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to start looking at greater than or equal to. So I'm going to choose that option here. Now if I think something's been selling particularly well, I can say that it's going to highlight it in green. So I'm going to say that anything that's sold £600 or more is going to be highlighted in green. So we can see that one figure there is above 600, that's automatically been highlighted. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one more rule, and I flag it up in yellow, and I'm going to choose between. So we can have between two numbers. I'm going to choose anything from 151, which is just slightly above my red threshold, and I want to take it up to 799. I'm going to hit done. Actually, I've just selected the wrong colour, so I'm just going to go back here. I'm going to choose yellow for that. That's sort of my amber warning, I suppose. So as we can see, conditional highlighting is really useful if we're dealing with a lot of data and we want to be able to easily flag up anything that's going great or a particular concern. So if we now go back to our edit menu, I'm going to choose the next tab along at the top, and it says Format. Now it's here that we can choose what type of data is being entered into a particular cell, or how the data is entered in. So if we have a look at the top few options, we have number, currency, percentage, date and time, and duration. So they're different types of data that could be input into the cells. Now below that, I have different options for how data could be entered in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the rows under the sales column. I'm going to go back into my edit menu, and I'm going to choose slider. Now, if I just tap on an individual cell, what it now appears is a slider, currently going from 1 up into 100. Now, this is something that I can edit. So if I just select all those cells again, go back to my edit menu, and where it says slider, I have a little eye with a circle next to it. If I tap on that, I can actually change the minimum or maximum values. And I can also change the increments. So instead of going up in increments of 1, it could be increments of 5, 10, or whatever you need it to be. I can also change the format of the number, so it could also be a currency or a percentage. So using this slider, I can just really quickly enter in information without having to type it in or to use a keyboard. If I go back to the edit menu, the next option I have is a stepper. I'm going to tap on that, and now when I tap on a cell, instead of being a slider, I can actually tap through the numbers. This is not so great if you've got a large range of numbers you're dealing with, but if you have a table where it's only 3 or 4 options, this can be quite good to just switch between and change the data as you need. The next option is a pop-up menu. So I'm going to select a different column for this. Now this is quite good for sort of text-based entry. If I tap on that, it gives me several items that I can enter in. So I've used this for the department column. So what I can do is give me 3 items, but I can add more if I need to. So I'm just going to put in a few items in here. And then at the bottom of this table, I can choose the initial value. So what it will do by default is it will just display the first item. We can see currently it's just displaying biographies, but you might not want that. You might want it to actually be blank. So if I choose blank, everything's blanked out and nothing will appear until I tap on the cell, and then I have my pop-up menu, and from there I can go through each cell and choose the category that I want. For the next type of input option, I'm just going to add a new column here, whether or not it's a sale item. So I'm just going to select all of the rows in that column, go back to my edit menu, go back to format, and then I have a tick box. So if I tap on tick box, it just gives me a few options, and I can just choose really simply if this is item's been in a sale. I'm just going to add one more column here and select all the rows. So what I have below that is a star rating. This is based out of 5 stars. So as I go through, I can actually tap and give a number of stars to each of the items that I've got. The final option is just for entering in text. So if you're not dealing with numerical data, you can enter in text. But generally, if you've selected automatic, it's going to pick it up as a text-based cell anyway. The final option is about arranging items. If I've got a spreadsheet that has different graphics, pictures, graphs, etc., I can choose what order those appear on the screen. I'll show you this with another item later on. It's not really applicable right now because all I've got here is one spreadsheet. If I tap on a cell and then look towards the bottom right of the screen, I can see a green button that says Cell, and this is the Cell Actions menu, and I can see I have several different options and things that I can input. So if I look along the top, I can see options for cutting, duplicating, copying and pasting and deleting, and then below that I can insert different things. So I can insert today's date, I can insert the current time, I can add a formula as well if that's something you need to do. In this video I'm not going to go too in depth about how different formulas work because that will take hours, but I'll just show you an example of a very similar formula you could input. So if I go to the bottom of the profit menu, I'm just going to choose the Cell Actions menu again, tap New Formula, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up all of the amount of money under the profit column. So I'm going to tap on the first one, and then I can see two blue circles, and I can actually drag and change that selection, and as you can see at the bottom it says sum D2 to D6. I'm going to hit the green tick at the end, and what that does is it gives me a complete total of all the profit that the books have made. What you can also do if your iPad is connected to the internet is insert a stock quote. This is updated in real time, so if you tap on that you can search for a particular company and it will input the most up-to-date data available. Below that I can add a comment, which is particularly useful if you're working on a spreadsheet collaboratively. And then below that I have quick filter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap on the header column where it says department. I'm going to go back to my Cell Actions and add a quick filter. Now what that means is that I can actually filter out between the different categories of book, and I can hide things. For example, if I just want to show the history books, I can tap on that and it will just show me all of the history books and how they are doing. If I want to turn off a filter, I can tap on that column again, and if I have a look towards the top right next to the paintbrush icon, there is a round green circle with 3 lines, and I can actually just turn that filter off to view all of my data again. If I have a look below that, I can see that I have a set of quick formulas as well. So if you're just adding something to the bottom of a column and you just want to add it up very quickly, I can just make use of that. I'm going to hit the cell just below sales, tap sum, it automatically adds it all up for me. I don't have to worry about inputting any particular formula for that. These formulas also work for other types of data you enter into. So if we have a look under the customer review, where it's all made up of stars, if I tap on cell and I tap on average, it will tell me the average rating for my products is 3 stars. I also have column actions. Now to do this I need to select a column. So I'm just going to tap on column A, and then I can see that I now have a green button in the bottom right hand corner that says column. Just like with Cell Actions, you can see I have the option of cutting, copying, pasting and deleting. I can also add a column before or after. And here is where I'll find my sorting options. I'm going to choose column C, where I have my sales, and then I will choose to sort it in ascending order. You can now see my table has adjusted and it's showing me the sales in order from lowest to highest. If I was to choose descending, then it would just do it in reverse from highest to lowest. As you can see, I've also got a quick filter just like before, and then below that I have the add a filter option. If I choose add a filter, I have far more options about what I can filter. This is particularly good if I'm dealing with numbers. For example, I might choose to only see books that have sold more than 50 copies, and to do that I can choose greater than. If I enter in 50 and then choose done, I can now see it's only showing me books that have sold more than 50 copies. At the top of this menu that's now appeared, I can see filter table and a switch next to it, which means I can turn this filter on or off. Below that I can see filters that are already in place, and if I want to delete them I can just tap on edit and then tap the round circle with the minus sign and then delete to get rid of it. Now as you can see, I have so many rules available for the types of filter that I can have. far too many to go through in this video, but if there's something you're interested in, have a look and explore through these menus to see if it can do what you need it to do for your spreadsheet. Now let's have a look at some of the other column actions available. I'm going to choose the department column, and we can see that the next option available to us about halfway down says add category for department. What this has done is it's broken up my table into the different categories. It's taken each of the different types of department and grouped them together. Now if you have a look under the history column, I have a switch, which means I can hide all of the data. This is particularly good if you frequently want to see different categories of information and hide the rest. The next option is Fit to Content. This will resize the width of the column based on the information inside. You also have the option of adjusting column width manually. So if I tap on column D and look towards the edge of that column at the top, I can see 2 lines. If I tap and hold on that, I can resize the column as I see fit. You'll notice it's snapping into place, which means it's showing you where it recommends the column ends based on the width of the data you have inside. Below that, I have the option to hide a column too. If I want to make that column visible again, I can select the next column along, choose column actions, and then choose unhide all columns. If we now have a look at the top right of the screen, we can see a plus icon. It's this menu where we have the option to add things. This section is broken up into 4 tabs, the first of which is a table. I can have multiple tables displayed on the same spreadsheet, and from here I can choose between several different custom templates. If I want to move my table around, you can see in the top left corner of this new table I have a white circle with a blue circle inside. If I tap and hold on that, I can move this table to a different place on the spreadsheet. I can also resize the spreadsheet quite easily. If I have a look around the bottom right corner, I can see 3 blue dots. By tapping, holding and dragging, I can actually resize the table as I see fit. Once again, I'm going to tap the plus sign in the top right corner of the screen, and now I'm going to choose the next tab along. This gives me the option of adding a chart or a graph based on the data I have available. I'm going to choose the column for department and also the sales column. To select multiple columns, I select the first one, and as we can see, about halfway down there are 2 blue dots. By tapping, holding and dragging, I can select multiple columns. Now if I go back to my plus icon, I can choose a type of graph and choose the type of graph or chart I would like to see. With the graph selected, I can choose the edit menu, which is the paintbrush icon in the top right corner. If we look at it now, we can see the contents of this menu has now changed based on what I have selected. I can choose a different colour scheme, whether or not I'm displaying a chart title, and the alignment of that title. I can choose whether or not the legend is displayed, whether I want a border. I can choose the typeface or change the font size. I can choose whether or not I want the values added to each of the columns and the alignment of those numbers. I can adjust the number format. I can also choose whether each of the columns has a rounded edge and whether the rounded edge applies to all corners or just the top part. I can also change the chart type. If I have a look along the top of this menu, I can see different tabs for my x-axis, my y-axis, as well as the arrangement for how this chart sits amongst the other data on the spreadsheet. Under the x-axis, I can choose whether or not I have the value labels shown, the number format. Under the value scale, I can choose how many steps there are in the data that's segmented along the bottom. I can add a reference line if I want to display the average. To remove the line, I just simply choose Remove Line. I can show whether I show the minor or major grid lines, the tick marks to help me segment the data, and whether I'm having the axis, name and lines displayed. Under the y-axis, I can choose whether I'm showing category labels, the series names, how the series names are displayed, whether I want to show the major grid lines and tick marks, and whether or not I want to display the axis name and the axis line. If I go back to the plus menu, I can see under the graphs and charts I have other options too. For example, I can show 3D charts as well as interactive charts. An interactive chart allows me to show several different charts in one place using the slider to adjust the data. If I go back to the Add menu and go to the third tab, this allows me to add different shapes or drawings. These are categorized to make them easier to find. I can tap and hold to move a shape around the screen, and using the small blue dots, I can resize it. If I have a shape selected and I go to the Edit menu, I can see this menu has changed once again. I can change the colour, whether or not it displays a border, and the size and colour of that border, whether I can see a shadow, a reflection, and I can change the opacity. If the shape has a caption, I can change the typeface and size as well as the alignment. And once again, we have the Arrange menu. This would allow me to hide the shape behind different objects on the spreadsheet. If I want to lock it into place, I can choose the lock option at the bottom. If I go back to the Add menu, the final option I have is for photos, videos, and audio. I'm going to choose photo and video and choose an image from my gallery. With the image selected, if I tap on the Edit menu, again it gives me a new set of options. I can choose to have a border around the image, I can change the colour and width of that border, I can add a shadow, a reflection, and just like with shapes, I can change the opacity. If I go to the next tab along, it says Image. Edit Mask allows me to add a crop to the image. And just like before, Arrange allows me to move the item above or below whatever else I have on the screen. Back on the Add menu, you can also see I have the option to add an image gallery, a drawing, or an equation. Drawing can be quite useful if you want to add a signature to a document. Just like in the Notes app, I can choose between a pen or a pencil or a highlighter. I can choose an eraser, or I can change the colour. This drawing or signature can be moved around or resized. If I go back to the Edit menu, I have a few options for this too. I can choose to animate the drawing. I can adjust its duration to make it faster or slower. And I can change the opacity. And just like before, I can change its arrangement on screen, hiding it below different objects. The final menu option we have is the three dots found in the top right corner of Numbers. This is the More menu. The first option is to collaborate with others. Here you can enter in the Apple ID or email address of someone you want to work on this document with. This is a much more useful way of working instead of emailing a document backwards and forwards. The next option is Share. Through here I can share this document over iMessage or different messenger apps, or upload it to a cloud service, or make use of AirDrop. The third option is to export. Here I can export my document as a PDF, an Excel, or a CSV document. Below that we have the option to print. This works if you have a AirPrint enabled printer. The next option is Find. If I'm working with a large document and I want to find a particular word, I can type that in and it will highlight every appearance of that word on the spreadsheet. The settings icon next to it at the bottom would allow me to make use of Find and Replace. So if I wanted to replace a word with something else, I can choose that option. On this menu we also have Settings. This allows me to adjust autocorrection, the comments, or the author name. And finally, we can password protect this document. Password protection can also make use of Touch ID or Face ID depending on what device you have. If you need further help with numbers or to send feedback based on your experience, you can find those options at the bottom of the More menu. So that's the end of my tutorial for numbers on the iPad. If you found this video useful, please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll be back soon with some more iPad tutorials.